It's a lengthy countdown.
It is.
Real quick, 40 seconds. You guys have a good Christmas?
Yeah. Yeah, mine was pretty
Yeah.
good.
Nice.
How about you?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. Nice and low key.
Mm-hmm. Same. Let's save this banter for the show.
Yeah, this is top shelf banter. I got you.
And our mics are not muted, so everybody's getting this. That's awesome.
Oh, are they? Oh, sorry about that.
It's all good. It's like hot mic recorded talk. So we're counting down here in 18 seconds. This gives everybody a chance to get on and get live. So. Well, all right, guys. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Sunday night. I got you with a live mic there on our countdown, so that's how I store up dirt on you guys. Just want you to know. But I am so thrilled to have Kyle Walton on our show, representing the libertarian side. Always a blessing to have you on the show, Kyle. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here, Wes. Thanks.
And then Christopher Souza is going to be representing the liberal side here. Chris, always a pleasure to have you as well, brother. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so looks like we got a couple folks who are already watching live. So it's going to be exciting tonight. We're going to get a chance to talk about the COVID-19 bill, which was just signed by Trump. I read that about 30 minutes ago, so that's going to be fun to talk about. But first, I want to just kind of talk to you guys about Christmas and how it's been going. How were your holidays, Kyle? Did you guys do anything fun at your house? Any parties that you went to or traditions that you started?
No new traditions. Actually, I take that back. We are going to start a new tradition.
Are you?
The day before Christmas Eve, we've started calling Christmas Adam. I don't know if that's a thing like around the world, but we're calling it Christmas Adam. And just like God took a rib out of Adam's, we're going to start smoking ribs on the 23rd on Christmas Adam. So that's going to be our new family tradition here on Christmas Adam. Other than that, it was nice and low key. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about food, we smoked a turkey. So my wife literally. She cut holes in this thing and just stuffed it with butter. And then it had cranberries and oranges and dressing and everything else. So I smoked that guy for about 8 or 9 hours. So it got up at a decent time. And then I have turkey for days, just storing up in my fridge. So we're going to have turkey sandwiches. We'll probably put it in soup.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Wherever you can put a turkey, we're going to be doing it because, yeah, we've basically got enough food to last for the next month. But it was delicious. Kids had a great time. We didn't really have anybody over. Aside from the family, just kind of took it easy. And I'm fighting off a cold myself. So it's very, 2020-esque when you got that going on. But otherwise, it's been a great holiday. Lots of fun. How about you, Chris?
As far as Christmas traditions, typically I go out to the movies in the afternoon with some family and with my wife. And movie theaters, obviously, I don't believe are very safe at the moment. So we stayed in and had a couple family members over and watched Wonder Woman 1984 on HBO Max. So that was nice. It still kind of felt like the movie theater experience with a superhero blockbuster, despite the fact that we couldn't really go out.
Yeah, I've heard some mixed reactions to that movie, so maybe that's something that we should do next time. Is we could do a film review on that. I haven't had a chance to see it. I did see the first one. I liked the first one. I've heard this one is more feminist, more liberal. So maybe you like it, Chris. I don't know, but
if anything, it's much less feminist.
Really interesting. Okay, we'll definitely have to do a review over that. So, like I said, I haven't had a chance to see it yet, but I am looking forward to it. I'm a big DC fan, so I think that'll be fun. I know there's a lot of other movies that are coming out this next year that I'm looking forward to, so that'll be fun. As you guys go into the New Year's, I think it's gonna be interesting for us again. We're used to having people over and or we travel, all that kind of stuff. My wife's birthday's coming up. I'd love to take her, somewhere, but it's tough, man. I mean, even with, I know I have relatives of mine that are getting the vaccine. My grandmother, I just found out, is about to get it, and that's awesome because she's in her, late 90s and stuff, and definitely part of the high risk community. So I'm kind of relieved about that. I know I'm sure I'll be getting it here pretty soon. But at the same time, we're not quite there yet. I remember hearing in early days, whenever COVID first hit in February and March, that it would take, even once they had a vaccine, it would take up to 6 months to get it out. So, and we're just starting to deliver it. And even then, it's going to take a little bit of time, before that immunity kicks in worldwide. So it's going to take a little while. And it's hard. It's definitely frustrating and difficult. But I'm grateful to have this show. I'm grateful I have a chance to talk to you guys about all kinds of topics and things like that. And as we go into the new year, I think that there's a lot to talk about. So let's jump into this topic real quick. I want to introduce it to you guys. So just in case for those folks that are watching live, or if you're watching, this show recorded, there has been a bill for about 2 weeks on the president's desk that is the COVID-19 stimulus bill or relief bill. And I'm actually looking at it here on my phone. This thing is a monster. It is over 5,000 pages, 5,593 to be exact. And there, we were just talking about it before the show. There is an enormous amount in this bill. There are the $600 direct payments for every American. That's some of the COVID-19 relief. There are unemployment benefits. There are benefits to small businesses, that type of thing. But there is an enormous amount of pork in this bill, everything from foreign aid to military money, all agriculture, all sorts of things are in this bill. And I asked our followers on our page over the week, what do you think the president should do with this bill? Should he sign it? Should he not sign it? Should he veto it? That type of thing. We were looking at this, and most of you, almost all of you, said that he should veto it, that whether it was liberals, conservatives, moderates, you can see some of the comments here. People thought the $600 wasn't enough, and that was a big talking point for Trump, was trying to get that up to $2,000 per person, especially when all of this aid is going to almost everything, all kinds of little pet projects and things like that. People called it a monstrosity. You can see Aaron Stevens there with a comment. Jared saying $600 won't benefit anyone who lost it over the last 10 months. Barry saying, yes, I agree with the president that the bill they were trying to ram right through doesn't do anything for the American people. I talked about politicians being crooked, giving themselves raises. That was in it. And then giving American people almost nothing. And then even liberals as well were saying, I agree with Trump for the reasons that he said in terms of vetoing this bill. And yet, as of about a little bit less than an hour ago, he has signed it. So let me ask you guys first, what do you think led him to sign this bill? I mean, we're talking about unemployment benefits expiring. It's going to take about a week to get that funding back up. So there's already an effect there. Could that have been it? Or do you see something else? What do you think, Kyle? What led him to change course on this?
I think it's political pressure. I mean, people are hurting right now. Democrats and I guess some Republicans, but mostly Democrats, have shut down cities. People can't work. People can't earn a paycheck. Small businesses are closing. People have no money. And so, $600 is an insult. It is a joke. People are right to be angry about that. But you know what? $600 is better than nothing. And so I actually have friends right now, actually a family right now. My sister is at her in-laws, and they're typically fairly liberal, kind of old school Southern liberal folks. And they were actually just talking about how Trump didn't sign this bill because Trump didn't want to give people the money, right? That is absolutely not the case here. But that's the perception that people are going to have, that Trump didn't want to give these people, give the American people money. Obviously, that's not the case. He's the only person who's actually been fighting for Americans to have more money, which, I'm not a big Trump guy, but good for him. This is an insult. It's a joke. People should be getting way more than $600. In fact, the solution is not a stimulus bill at all. It's opening up the economy. It's putting people back to work, letting people go back to work. But to answer the question, yeah, it's political pressure. So Trump wants people to have something, and love him or hate him, that is the right thing.
You agree or disagree, Chris?
I somewhat agree. I somewhat disagree. I think if you look at his statement where he's taking credit for, signing this bill, a lot of it is about his image. He's talking a lot about how, his actions averted a second Great Depression. his actions are what fast-tracked this vaccine, when we actually know that over the summer he actually rejected a lot of the steps that would have gone toward getting this vaccine out faster. But I don't think that he is necessarily motivated by any kind of generosity. I don't think that he was visited by 3 ghosts anytime this week. He does want more money for Americans than many of the congressional Republicans wanted, but he wants less than what some of the congressional Democrats wanted, at least as far as what he is advocating publicly. So yeah, Trump has always been kind of very populist and not necessarily the fiscal conservative that you would expect from a GOP president.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't necessarily think his motives are pure here, and I think that his stalling tactics and delay tactics were, I think, a little bit of political punishment toward the GOP in Congress for not doing enough to help him steal this election. And he was very clear about that in his statement when he said, they need to be doing more to help me continue in office.
This is essentially. Go ahead, Wes.
I was just going to say, to me, this is signs that the swamp lives, right? The swampiness of DC has always been this notion that people don't enter public life with pure motives, that there are special interests, that control most of the major politicians and forms of government, and that those special interests, when the chips are down, will prefer themselves and their survival over the American people. And I think that's what you see here, right? I think that is what you see here is an enormous amount of special interest at work, and essentially every politician who is anyone getting something out of this, getting their projects through. And it frustrates me to no end that this is essentially how government works or doesn't work in our society, is no matter whether you have a Republican or a Democrat, whether it's Trump or not, is we still end up with this, ridiculousness. We still end up with an enormous amount of spending. And I think there's a problem when people are spending money and it's just going right back to them. I mean, that's a problem in itself, when we're spending money for the future for our kids. Now, in a time of crisis, there's reasons to do that on the right things. But then you go further in this, and there's all kinds of ridiculous aid in this because everybody's jumped on under the guise of COVID relief. And that is, again, insincere in what we're doing. We were talking right before the show about how we wish there had been truly just a COVID relief bill as opposed to an omnibus bill attached to this and so many other things attached to it. But that's not how government works, unfortunately. And I honestly, I don't know what the fix is to that, but it's something that is really the effects of which are felt over time in terms of inflation and deficit spending, but aren't acute enough to be overcome, is what I see. So what were you going to say, Kyle?
On the point of stalling and kind of going back to what Chris's point was about Trump kind of playing a little bit of vengeance or retribution to Republicans. I don't think that is necessarily the case, especially when you have people like Bernie Sanders in early December, I think it was December 7th or 8th, admitting that the Democrats held up a relief bill pre-election, that they were the ones who are actually doing it. So, I mean, I think this is both sides doing this, but ultimately, it's a joke that these people who work for the government, I think you hit the nail on the head here, Wes. These people in the government vote for this extraordinary bill that only funds them and their interests, and you have $600 to the American people. Right. That is a joke, man. That is an absolute joke. And
I think to frustrate. So me as a conservative, what I believe, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on this, Kyle. As a conservative, I'm skeptical of both big government, and I would tell you that I'm also skeptical of big corporate business, right? In both forms of it, I think there's a danger to be distanced from local people, from individual Americans, from the concerns and the plights that we go through on a daily basis. And that's what you see. And so many conservatives, I think, are quick to talk about big government being a problem. But if big business is also a problem, and you see it flexing its muscle here, and you don't deal with that too, then you still end up with this. You end up with big government as a crony of big business, and I think that's what we see. And I think you're right. Like, what was Trump supposed to do here? Is it's not like there was an alternative coming. There was not much else he could have done, and so you end up being forced to. You're either pro or against COVID relief. It's as simple as that. And that when the big government and the big business control the messaging, what are you supposed to do with that? Especially at a time when, the election has not gone his way and he's only got a few days left is what it looks like. So it's just
especially when you tie on the omnibus bill, which funds the government through September, and you end up with like $1 billion for the Smithsonian somehow tied to the COVID relief bill, or $10 billion, sorry, going to Pakistan for gender studies. It's an absurd way that the government works. And like you, I don't know how it comes back or how we come back from that, but I tell you what, man, my libertarian blood gets flowing, and revolution might be in the air.
So, talk to me, Chris, about the future. So we've talked about a Biden presidency. I know we've got some shows coming up. We're going to talk his cabinet, that type of things. But generally speaking, how do you expect Biden to govern? Will it be more of this type of thing? Will it be kind of handouts to everybody, and including special interests, or do you see him having the capability to kind of wrangle this thing differently? What do you think, Chris?
I certainly hope. I 100% agree that $600 after months of no direct cash payments to individual citizens is a joke. It's not enough. I would love to believe that Biden will take office in January and we will immediately see much more generous payments to Americans who have been dealing with an unprecedented situation for a year now. But he's still got to deal with the Republicans in Congress. He's got to deal with Mitch McConnell. And I do know that, Biden has a reputation of reaching across the aisle, getting along with Republicans and making deals. But I don't know if our climate and our political system is built for that anymore. I think it's a miracle that this got done. I think you're absolutely right that this was not enough and that it included a lot of things it shouldn't have included. It was also something after months and months and months of nothing. And I think the $600 will make a real difference in at least some Americans' lives.
Yeah.
And I hope to see more in the future, but I'm not optimistic about the Republican willingness to work with Biden.
Yeah, and to be clear, I'm not against COVID relief. There's numerous different studies on this. Countries throughout the world. I remember reading about Singapore, and by I think it was July, they had already done like 4 different stimulus payments to their people. It's a crisis. It's a crisis, and people need help. It's simply the way that this goes down, I think, is what is so frustrating. I was reading from like several Congress people and their tweets and their blogs and stuff, and they were saying we basically got this bill and then we had to vote on it within a day. So they were giving a 5,500 page bill, and they're like, here you go, yes or no, right? What is a congressperson supposed to do with that kind of system, right? Like there's no way. And then I think it's a problem that the president can't line item veto anything. And I think this is my ultimate frustration here, is that when you have a candidate who's got, several different centers of power, right? You've got, for example, president who comes in and has the Senate and the House, or, allies on the Supreme Court. There's a limited window and a chance to do some very, fundamental and powerful things, whether that's an amendment to the Constitution or whatever, when you've got numerous different centers of power. And I wished we got to a point where we were able to alter the structure. Obviously, I don't see that happening. I think you're right when you talk about Biden going against the Republican Senate, most likely. He's obviously going to have Republicans on the Supreme Court. But, I wish that Trump had used his power early on to be able to do something like that. Because a president with a line item veto, if it's the right person, can just strike through so much of this pork, right? And just basically eviscerate this bill down to what it needs to be. There's other solutions as well. Balanced budget, we could talk about all kinds of other things, but I wish there was something that really changed the system, because it's just gross. It's gross when it gets to this point. And again, it's not about the alternative of being nothing, which is what led Trump to have to sign it, I think. But it's the fact that the system is just open for anyone who's got the money to do it. It's really for sale. It's government for sale. I think that's a huge problem. So, and that's where I agree with you, Kyle. I agree with you on the libertarian stance on this. It's gotten out of control. Again, we disagree on almost everything except when it comes to spending money. And then whether we're forced or we're willing, we all end up doing that. Go ahead.
The goal here, the solution here is not for the Federal Reserve to come up with, and when I mean come up with, I mean literally print out of thin air more money, right? That doesn't solve anything, right? In fact, that only devalues the money that we already have. In 1913, a bunch of government bureaucrats and a bunch of wealthy bankers got together on Jekyll Island in Georgia and created this monster called the Federal Reserve. And this monster in the Federal Reserve prints money at will and devalues the money that we currently have.
Yeah.
And this is how they control the American people. It's how they control the American people for over 100 years so far. And the answer to COVID relief is not for the government just to print out of thin air money that devalues everything. That's money that doesn't exist. It's not tied to anything. It's all imaginary at the end of the day. And that's not how you come out of a recession. It's not how you come out of an economy. I mean, people have to get back to work. Economy has to open back up. People have to go back to making a living and producing and getting a paycheck.
Right.
Like, government can't be the solution. And the people who want government to be a solution, that's part of the problem as far as this libertarian.
No, I mean, like I've spent lots of time like watching and listening to like Bernie Sanders speeches, AOC speeches, and like it feels like 80% or more of the time they are railing against this. They are railing against big government and big business, right? And they're calling out, the millionaires and billionaires and all this stuff that are controlling government politicians. So there's a common like concern there. It's just that their solution tends to be, well, let's just, pay for everybody's college debt or whatever, right? Like, it still doesn't solve the problem of this. I don't want to call it establishment, but this, macro problem of huge forms of power that have no allegiance whatsoever to the American people, that are
and then mislabeling it capitalism. Like, that's not capitalism. That's not free markets, right? This is cronyism at its best. Is when government and business mix together. That's not capitalism. That's not free market economics.
Yeah, and I guess and giving you credit, Chris, on this, because I know we've had discussions about it before, is that you don't consider yourself a socialist or that far left leaning. I know we've talked about Bernie Sanders and your mixed feelings on him, but I would love to get to a point where we have more common sense, practical solutions to this that I think is going to take libertarians and liberals and conservatives like myself coming up together. What conservatives did is they just kind of trusted one guy, like, here, we're just going to throw Trump at it and see what happens. We trusted one guy with the presidency to see what we could do. And yet the monster still lives. And yet even he, at the end of his presidency, is signing bills that he would have been horrified to do early on, that his constituents don't support, and that even many liberals don't support. So I look forward to that, but it's going to take solutions that come from people who aren't bought and sold. And to me, that's folks like us, right? Folks like us being able to mobilize and think through what is a better way to do this. And I think there are many. So I appreciate it. Chris, did you want to have a last word here before we route it out for the year?
Sure. I mean, I think direct cash payments are the only solution right now. If we reopen everything, there will still be the problem of no demand, no customers showing up to these businesses that are suddenly open because they don't want to die of coronavirus, which if they did go and then they died of coronavirus would also depress the economy. So I don't think that reopening is the answer. I don't think that just letting businesses do what they want to do is the answer right now, because the underlying economic problem is the scientific and medical problem that we're seeing right now. So unfortunately, right now, I do think that printing a lot more money and giving directly to the American people is the only solution.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, again, I understand why Trump did it. I understand why he signed it. There wasn't like there was an alternative. At this point, it's too late. But there has to be better ways to do this that don't include also giving way more money to a lot of other people, including many who have nothing to do with with what we're dealing with. So fascinating stuff, guys. I love the discussion. Love where this show is going. I appreciate you guys being on it. For those watching, looks like we had about 6-7 folks who are watching the entire time. Let us know what you think. Let us know, do you agree or disagree with Trump's decision, given that he was, essentially it was these or this or nothing. So I'd love to get your thoughts on that. If you've got questions for Chris or Kyle or myself, we're going to enjoy the new year. I hope you guys have an awesome New Year celebration, doing what you can this year. Obviously, like we talked about, is kind of limited, but I look forward to the future of this show as we start to work on these type of solutions, being able to talk about this without being funded by, some big government business co-op or whatever. Thank you guys so much for your time on the show. Thank you for being a part of it the past several months. Honestly, can't thank you enough, and I'm looking forward to where we're going. So have a great New Year's, and we'll see you in 2021.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.